Eric Berne's Games People Play invites listeners into a practical and accessible map of everyday social life, built on the idea that our interactions are governed by hidden patterns and ulterior motives as much as by courtesy and goodwill. The book frames social life as a theater of ongoing exchanges where people, often without realizing it, slip into familiar games that shape outcomes, reinforce identifications, and soothe or threaten the sense of autonomy. From the very outset, Berne situates his theory within the broader framework of transactional analysis, but his aim is to make these ideas usable in ordinary life, therapy, and social observation. He unfolds a coherent, user-friendly model that helps us recognize what we're doing in conversations, why certain exchanges feel emotionally compelling, and how to steer toward more authentic interaction. The core starting point is a pair of hunger drives that drive social engagement: stimulus hunger and recognition hunger. Stimulus hunger refers to the basic human need to be touched, acknowledged, and engaged with. Recognition hunger is the longing to be seen as valuable, competent, and understood. In infancy, stroking and responsive handling satisfy these needs, creating a biological and psychological frame for ongoing interaction. When direct physical contact is constrained, people learn to substitute symbolic forms of stroking, speech, gestures, rituals, and shared meanings that still deliver the sense of being noticed and valued. Berne introduces time structuring or programming as the way we choreograph our waking hours through work, social rites, and more intimate fantasies. He distinguishes three layers of time structuring: material, data-driven, and material tasks; social, manners, rituals, and conversational routines; and individual, personal choices and private fantasies. These layers aren't mere conveniences. They form a matrix that either permits or constrains genuine stroking and the pursuit of autonomy. Berne explains why social life naturally organizes itself into games, with pastimes forming a surface layer of routine interactions and games operating beneath that surface with patterned sequences that arrive at a payoff. Playing, he notes, is not inherently fun. A game can be serious, even corrosive, yet governed by a set of rules that shape emotional flow and self-justifying or self-sabotaging outcomes. Pastimes, by contrast, are more overt social activities that help structure time and screen potential partners for more complex relationships. They also stabilize identity by allowing people to inhabit recognizable social roles within repetitive patterns. These frames of interaction give people a sense of order and predictability while allowing room for risk, competition, or the possibility of genuine connection. Part 1, the analysis of games, moves from broad scaffolding to concrete analytic tools. Berne introduces three core components: ego states, transactions, and procedures/rituals that each person carries as a dynamic repertoire. The ego states are parent, adult, and child, not fixed roles but fluid systems that can be activated in different combinations. He names them as exteropsychic, parent, neopsychic, adult, and archeopsychic, child, reminding readers that these states suit or distort communication depending on context. The parental influence spans direct commands and more indirect injunctions. The child appears in two forms: the adapted child, compliant and precocious, and the natural child, rebellious and creative. The adult stands as the data processor and mediator that keeps the other two from spiraling into chaos. Transactions are the basic units of social exchange: a stimulus followed by a response. Complementary transactions, adult to adult, parent to parent, or child to child, produce predictable, appropriate responses. But when transactions cross, communication falters. Berne illustrates cross-transactions with vivid clinical examples, such as an adult-initiated inquiry that elicits a parent or child response or a therapist-patient countertransference where the therapist responds as a parent to a child. He introduces visual tools, including the 9-vector relationship diagram, to help observers see possible interactions across three ego states in two people: angular transactions, involving multiple ego states, and duplex transactions, involving 4 ego states, detail how more complex maneuvers, like flirting or a sales pitch, play out within social life. The third chapter in Part 1 covers procedures and rituals. Transactions typically unfold in sequences guided by programming from the ego states and shaped by social forces. Procedures are efficient, data-driven series of complementary transactions aimed at a particular outcome. Rituals are patterned sequences with a parental flavor that organize social life and structure time. Berne distinguishes efficiency from effectiveness, using concrete examples from workplaces and casual settings to show how rituals, such as greeting sequences or extended social leave-takings, help maintain connectedness and stroke, even as they mask deeper fears or social pressures. The 8-stroke greeting ritual is a classic example of a ritual designed to preserve sociability and prevent the spinal cord from shriveling, as he words it. Pastimes, the next domain, examine how social gatherings are organized to test potential partners and stabilize social roles. Pastimes vary in sociological form, man talk versus lady talk, developmental stage, youthful versus mature, and the level of transactional complexity, child-child, adult-adult, parent-parent, or mixed forms. They serve a social selection function, guiding people toward or away from relationships that might become more intimate later. They stabilize identity by providing a ready-made script for people to inhabit and test, enabling predictable patterns of response while leaving space for genuine evaluation. Finally, the games section defines a game as an ongoing, ulteriorly motivated sequence of transactions that ends in a predictable payoff. The crucial distinctions are their ulterior motive and their payoff. Games aren't merely about deception in every moment, they reveal hidden motives as relationships shift from cooperative to self-protective or manipulative. Berne emphasizes that games can arise spontaneously in everyday life and may be highly adaptive, especially in navigating fear, dependence, or the discomfort of vulnerability. He offers a vivid marital example, If It Weren't For You, IWFY, where a wife's complaints about her husband's control become a social lever that yields sympathy, social attention, or internal feelings of cleverness and control. The husband's prohibitions may reflect fear or self-doubt, and the couple's back and forth follows a sequence of instruction, compliance, resistance, and reassurance that ultimately reinforces a shared existential stance. The payoff, often a sense that the couple can manage risk or fear through familiar patterns, helps explain why such patterns persist across the rhythms of daily life, even when they undercut genuine connection. In Part 2, Berne shifts from general theory to a structured catalog of social games. He frames the catalog with a clinical, therapy-friendly methodology, notational shorthand, accessible language, and a theory-to-practice approach that seizes on the dynamics unfolding in real settings: therapy groups, family discussions, workplace conversations, and social gatherings. The games are grouped into families by typical social settings: life games, marital games, party games, sexual games, underworld games, with additional sections for consulting room games and good games. Each game is parsed using a consistent schema: thesis, aim, roles, dynamics, examples, social paradigms, moves, and a list of advantages, internal/external, psychological and social, biological, existential, plus its relationships to other games. A central emphasis runs through all of this: the payoff-driven nature of games. The moves are designed to harvest the maximum permissible satisfaction at each step and culminate in a payoff that makes the pattern feel rational and necessary. The life games section launches with emblematic patterns that can shape a person's trajectory and affect those around them. Alcoholic becomes a 5-handed social drama rather than a medical diagnosis, with roles like the alcoholic, persecutor, rescuer, patsy, and connection. The payoff isn't simply the drinking, it's the aftereffects that yield moral drama, social rescue, and a sense of identity within a group. Debtor frames debt, credit, and obligation as scripts that organize long-term life paths, echoing cultural practices around dowry or mortgage. Try and collect TAC, and its counterpart Try and Get Away with It, tag AWI, expose the social maneuvering around status, possessions, and power, illustrating how financial games can restructure intimate relationships and everyday trust. Kick Me, WHM, reveals vulnerability turned into provocation or withdrawal, with gendered variants that demonstrate how social signaling and blame shifts can mask underlying needs for proximity and validation. See What You Made Me Do, SWYMD, is a core marital game, relying on interruptions and blame, a lever that extracts justification or relief from intimacy or controls a partner's behavior. It demonstrates how couples contract around perpetual miscommunication and how accusation and defense patterns become entrenched across years. Marital games also include Corner, which shows manipulation working as a barrier to intimacy, slips in opinion about finances or house care that escalate into stalemate. Courtroom unfolds like a mock trial within a relationship or a therapy group, where each partner stakes a claim and defenses brush against a shifting therapeutic frame. The antithesis strategy, shifting from third-person accusations to direct, face-to-face dialogue, becomes a key tool to interrupt the pattern and invite real communication. Frigid Woman traces long cycles of sexual distance in marriage, where withdrawal and attempts at intimacy bounce against fear, blame, and a need for emotional control. Harry depicts the burdened housewife, carrying multiple social and domestic duties, whose fatigue can threaten the relationship if her boundaries aren't acknowledged. The antithesis here can range from practical boundary setting to reconfiguring the couple's therapeutic work or broader family expectations. Across Part 2, Berne makes clear that intimacy demands moving beyond the games that substitute for connection. The payoff structure, the adult-to-adult exchanges, and the antithesis moves deployed in therapy all aim to realign participants toward more authentic engagement. He underscores that games can be protective in some circumstances, offering a stable equilibrium for someone who needs structure, but they can also become destructive if left unchecked. The clinical emphasis is practical. Identify the thesis of the game, map the moves that sustain it, reveal the social and psychological patterns at play, and then consider antidotes that nudge people toward more autonomous, adult-to-adult interactions. The catalog continues with Party Games, which illuminates 4 archetypal patterns that emerge in social gatherings. Ain't It Awful, Blemish, Schlemiel, and Why Don't You? Yes But. Ain't It Awful voices moral outrage and shared catastrophe to close inquiry and lock people into fixed viewpoint. Blemish exposes the depressive child positioning. Others' flaws are weaponized to ward off intimacy and preserve distance. Schlemiel treats mischief with a forgiving social contract, but the pattern still allows a degree of manipulation to persist. Why Don't You? Yes But is the quintessential problem-solving ritual, where one person speaks of a problem and then rejects every offered solution with a chorus of yes, but. The ritual sustains the speaker's sense of autonomy while preserving fear of vulnerability and change. In the Sexual Games chapter, Berne exposes the choreography of erotic play that often mirrors broader power dynamics and risk. LYHF, Let's You and Him Fight, serves as a dramatic mechanism in which a woman pits 2 men against one another for social drama or personal reward. Perversion sections examine fetish and masochistic patterns as manifestations of a childlike seeking for control and belonging, potentially reframed through game analysis to reduce harm and redirect energy into healthier exchanges. Rapo, or the kiss-off and indignation sequence, explores how seduction and withdrawal can escalate into harm or even legal danger, including the dangerous badger game, when accusations are weaponized for power. The stalking game and uproar map the theatrics of display and clash between desire and distance, where the hope for closeness collides with fear of intimacy. Across these sexual games, Berne emphasizes how gendered scripts and broader social power dynamics are reflected in intimate encounters, and how a pragmatic game analysis can help participants reframe these patterns toward more honest connection. Underworld games broaden the lens to crime and punishment, showing how adult life takes on a criminal theater. Cops and robbers and related patterns highlight the thrill of outwitting authorities, the social drama of risk, and the status claims tied to notoriety. Berne distinguishes between criminals who play for profit and those who play for sport, offering clinical insight that helps therapists separate players from straight professionals. How Do You Get Out of Here investigates time management within prisons and psychiatric institutions, revealing how inmates structure lives to maximize release prospects or prolong entrapment through their games. Bum Rap and Other Con Games illustrate how social systems can become complicit in manipulation, while outsiders, police, prosecutors, and therapists, often enter the same games they aim to regulate. Consulting room games turn the lens inward, focusing on the therapeutic setting itself. Greenhouse is a playful, sometimes antiquated variant of psychiatry in which therapy groups reveal the social theater of psychoanalysis, even as it can become a performance rather than a growth process. I'm Only Trying to Help You, ITHY, exposes a trap when helpers use their professional role to shield resistance and avoid the patient's vulnerability. Berne maps a spectrum of responses, from ignoring to gently confronting, to show how genuine healing requires maintaining the therapeutic frame while recognizing when counter-moves are appropriate to re-establish accountability. Across these consulting room games, the through line remains. Social life is a constant theater of games in which people negotiate power, vulnerability, identity, and control. The moves are driven by the need for reassurance, relief from guilt, or mastery, even as they deliver social status, avoidance of responsibility, or the thrill of victory. The ego state architecture, adult, parent, and child, threads through every family, workplace, party, and therapy room, carrying the same families of patterns in different guises. The clinical method is consistent. Name the thesis of the game, map the moves that sustain it, expose the paradigms at play, and design antitheses that interrupt the pattern and encourage healthier transactions. The narrative then broadens to the social implications of games beyond individual couples and therapy rooms. Berne makes the point that games are transmitted across generations and cultures, shaping who we become as parents, partners, and colleagues. The social selection of friends often clusters around the games we play, helping to explain why changing one's games can yield social upheaval or reorientation. Games sit in a space between simple pastime and intimate relation, offering a socially sanctioned way to negotiate risk and maintain cohesion when candor would threaten harmony. The idea is that intimacy requires disciplined candor, and games operate as a buffer against the risks of complete openness, even as they constrain authentic connection. The through line is stubborn and clear. People develop a repertoire of games to manage fear and to secure social advantage, sometimes at the cost of genuine closeness. Berne's method remains pragmatic. Identify the game's thesis, lay out the moves, reveal the underlying social scripts, and then articulate the antitheses and therapeutically useful interventions that move people toward more adult-to-adult exchanges. As the book evolves toward integration, Berne foregrounds one overarching trajectory: autonomy. Autonomy is presented as the liberation of awareness, spontaneity, and intimacy, the capacity to live in the present with an honest sense of self and others. He outlines 4 forms of awareness: present moment perception, eidetic or vivid perception, and the ability to hear and see on one's own terms, each a step away from parental scripting and toward a more self-authored life. Spontaneity becomes the ability to choose freely, to express genuine feelings in the here and now, and to balance parent, adult, and child in a way that makes honest connection possible. Intimacy, finally, is mature candor between people who can be open and present, free from the distortions of game playing. True autonomy, while challenging and fragile, offers the best path to meaningful and lasting relationship. Berne closes with a sober, pragmatic invitation. Some people may remain tethered to social games for a sense of belonging, but others can pursue autonomy and deeper, more authentic forms of connection. The text leaves listeners with a hopeful, practical promise. By recognizing, interrupting, and redirecting game patterns, we can choose relationships characterized by genuine adult-to-adult exchange rather than predictable, self-justifying patterns. The appendix ties the entire framework together with a taxonomy that helps separate internally programmed, reality-tested, and socially programmed actions, anchored by the core categories of games and intimacy within the social domain. Berne uses this structure to reinforce a central message. The ultimate aim of transactional analysis is not merely to label behavior but to illuminate the hidden dynamics that drive it and to guide people toward more honest, autonomous forms of relating. The book ends with a sober call to action, a choice between remaining in the safety of familiar patterns and the social belonging they confer, or stepping into the uncertain but potentially richer ground of awareness, spontaneity, and true intimacy. The journey from game-filled interaction to autonomous, authentic relationship is not simple or guaranteed, but it offers the clearest route to meaningful connection in a world that is perennially negotiating the delicate balance between autonomy and belonging.